Jamie Oliver joins me right here in Studio Q.
Hey, man.
Welcome.
Good to be here.
So there's another study about sugar in the news today. There are lots of health issues that you could champion, have championed. Why sugar?
Look, at the end of the day, sugar's always been controversial. It's always been linked, from the days of slavery right way through to today. And it's prolific. That's the problem. So it's not saying we don't like sugar. We do. We love maple syrup, honey, sugar. We love cake. But in a way that kind of, cake and chocolate bars are kind of honest. Because you've always known that it's a bit like saucy, a bit naughty. But I think the industry's changed over 40 years. Sugar, technically, chemically, helps products do certain things and shelf life and all sorts of different things. But it's laced in everything. Cereal, the cereal aisle is controlled and laced with sugar. Processed foods, the same. And of course, the largest amount of sugar consumed by our children and teenagers is sugary sweetened drinks. So it's not that I've just gone weird. They've earned the responsibility to, in my opinion, now be taxed.
And you feel like there's something disingenuous going on. You said cakes are honest. Maple syrup is honest. There's something disingenuous.
Well, I think what's weird about us humans, is that we kind of normalize stuff. And normalizing stuff, whether it's kind of attitudes towards people, foods, it's really interesting. So it's now considered normal to have, multi-pack bottles of fizzy drinks in the home. Mm-hmm. But that's not normal. It was always a treat. And when it was a treat, we're all good. But now it's normalized in the home. So what happens is you've just got generations of kids all around the world that are consuming too many calories a day. They're empty calories. Doesn't do anything for you in a kind of positive sense. And it doesn't make you less hungry. So that tracks into obesity, which tracks into type 2 diabetes, which tracks into an early death on this planet. And it's not me saying this. This is statistics. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm not saying don't have the soda you love. I'm just saying where is the on-off button? Where's the restraint?
And you're proposing a tax.
Yeah.
Why a tax?
Well, look, the French have done it, and they're not a stupid nation, right? The Mexicans have done it because they're so deep in trouble with type 2 diabetes.
And obesity,
75,000 amputations a year. The French are doing it because they're proactive. And I'm suggesting it in Britain and frankly any country around the world because I do think that these industries are too rich, too successful, and they don't, in my opinion, care about your kids. So while we're dealing with the cost of bad health, which is in healthcare, I think the money can and should be sort of put into schools and the health service. And there's many people, about 65% that the polls have been saying are in support at the moment, which is quite high.
You brought up the example of Mexico that has levied a tax.
Yeah.
It actually brought down revenues on sugary drinks.
6-7%, yeah.
Yeah. Congress there recently halved that taxation. Mm-hmm. What do you take from Mexico's experience?
The reason Mexico got their tax was because Bloomberg funded it and they just didn't know where it came from. And it was a good thing. And for all the people fighting for good, they won a battle. But the reality is they got...
What do you mean Bloomberg funded it?
He funded the kind of groups, the NGOs that fought for the better good, the better health of Mexico. There's a great bit of work from Mr. Bloomberg, who in my opinion, has done amazing things and I admire very much. But the question is, in Mexico's fairly, I don't know what the polite word to say, it got in, I think, quite... How can I say? Now they're back in election. The money coming into government from the sugary drinks industry is massive. Therefore, of course, they're fighting to remove it. And I think currently they're talking about halving it. So that doesn't surprise me. So, it's controversial.
Another place that has proposed and enacted something similar is New York. They had a partial ban on sugary drinks over a certain size. And then it was struck down in 2014. They cited personal autonomy as one of the factors.
Yeah, well done.
How do you respond to that argument? In other words, that
it's
outside of the authority
Bloomberg
to tell
was right, and you got one of the cleverest men in the world that doesn't need to take a living from the state, right? Investing loads of his money in trying to look after New Yorkers. I think at the scale of the person that he is and the action that people like him do, it's not the fact that he wins or fails. The ripples and the conversation that he created changed the landscape globally, by the way. So the fact that he didn't pull it off didn't mean he didn't succeed. It showed how industry can kind of like clout it back. And this is the mechanisms in which North America are particularly controlled, but also the world. But, I think, look, at the end of the day, like, actually the most controversial thing I'm talking about at the moment isn't actually the tax. The tax will drop off 6-7%. It will raise £1 billion in the UK, and we'll spend that on kids' education and hospitals. That isn't... Even easier than that is if you look on my Facebook, like just putting 14 teaspoons on the front of pack, that will drop off sales even more because everyone, even scientists, when I went to the House of Commons the other day, I just hacked a load of bottles and just put teaspoons on right above the normal ones. And everyone was like, oh, and they're scientists and doctors. And the thing is like 100% of the population, 100%. Like I haven't met anyone yet that doesn't believe that teaspoons are the fastest, quickest, most robust way to empower busy people to make better decisions. But the industry will hate that because that will drop off sales even more than my little tax.
Okay, you had that experience. You mentioned the polls, 65% of people support the tax. At the same time, your prime minister opposes the idea.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't?
No, he probably won't do it, but he hasn't. I've met him. I've had several meetings with him. I was with him last Sunday. Like he's open-minded to. Like, he has to launch a childhood obesity strategy in the next 4 months, and it's got to be good. And my job is to make him brave. And good ain't good enough, by the way. So at the moment, currently, from his mouth to me, like he's open-minded to anything. Not just taxing, but also where the money from the tax is hypothecated, right? So, like, he hasn't said no yet. And he might not do it. I'm not saying he will do it. I'm saying he might not do it, but he's open-minded. So I think the difference is how radical will he be, you know?
So you think you can win this one?
It depends if you want to judge me on winning being on or off, or is it about the splash or the ripples? All I know is I'm doing my job. And, like, in my personal opinion, like, honesty and clarity is the story. And the biggest problem is disadvantaged 4 to 11-year-old kids. They're the ones that are most at risk. They're busy parents that might not know about food or have been taught about food or where it comes from or how it affects their body at home or at school. You know, what you have to understand is that the food industry loves confusion, right? And clarity. You know, humans are really good. You know, when humans get good, clear information, they often make good choices. And it doesn't mean they can't, you know, go off piste, because we like going off piste, right? But at least we know when we're doing what. So we'll see. We'll see.
How much do you sympathize with your opposition, and how much are you frustrated? That was my question.
Sympathize.
You're very frustrated and angry.
I'm pro-business, right? Yeah. I sell their products in my restaurants, right? Because I believe in choice. I'm just saying, look, you're too successful. It's now affecting health. Have a tax, have a slap. There's a naughty corner. But carry on with your business. And by the way, next time you hurt our public, right? You'll do it. You'll get, you know, I think government needs to control business, right? And it's not that I'm controversial, because there's many laws in our countries that stop one business, you know, having full control or having kind of like a cartel, or, you know, there's many of those laws around. So the thing is, as the world changes, which it always has done, like, it's down to the parents and politicians to kind of rebalance the landscape. And my only concern is that people on this planet, while we're here for a short amount of time, have the best opportunity to be happy and healthy. The best information. Regardless of money. You know, and the best food in the world, you know, has never come from the rich, right? But people think it's for the rich. So access and education, access to fresh food and education, aka what do I do with the food? You know, how can I be resourceful to create a delicious dish that's affordable? These are the challenges of our time. And when I went to the areas around the world where people live the longest this year, none of them were rich, okay? So for me, that fills me with goodness, right? I
have a grandma in Rwanda, rural Rwanda. She's 102.
Oh my God!
You know,
right? So this is what I'm talking about, right?
I'm speaking with Chef Jamie Oliver. We're talking about sugar, health, good health all over the world. A focus on healthy eating is becoming more and more central to what you do. You've just turned 40. Is there a correlation there?
Definitely. I think not just turning 40. I mean, 40, I think, is a moment in time where you look back and think, well, that was good. And then you look forward and go, well, it ain't going to last forever. But also, like, technically I should be, like, at the top of my game, you know, like a little bit settled, hopefully learnt a few things, hopefully spent 30 years making friends and alliances and not, you know, not hopefully being erratic and giving anyone reason to distrust me. But at the same time, like, being healthy, being optimal, like being a dad. I've got 4 kids myself. And I think when you're a parent, often you think about other people's kids in similar ways, like, you know, they're our kids kind of thing. So I think, like, I'm just in a really interesting place right now.
You brought up making alliances. What's the current state of advocacy in terms of alliances between groups, between health advocates, environmentalists, the cooking world, anti-poverty? What's the state of that cooperation right now?
It's getting better with social media. You know, a little forward or a little share, you know. There's lots of people duplicating similar stories in different territories, in different languages, with the same problem. The nutrition transition, which is basically the crappy Western diet going around the world, has the same effect in every single country. So interestingly, even in North America, like, you're fairly well behaved, or I would say, you know, there's controversial bits. Europe's pretty tight, it's pretty good, pretty well behaved, although I still ain't happy. But if you look at how these companies behave in Africa, India, you know, China, like, it's the Wild West. So I think, like, groups are sharing more. It's getting easier. But at the same time, you know, what you have to realize is the biggest industry on this planet is the food industry. Many people are conflicted. Broadcasters conflicted. We're fighting at the moment to change junk food advertising to our children until after the watershed, after 9 o'clock. You know, that means that all the broadcasters are now conflicted. Papers, newspapers, magazines, governments, you know, so it feels a little bit like David and Goliath.
How much do you sympathize with consumers in that sense? We get so much conflicting information right now. There's a lot of people in the Western world, I'd say, that feel guilty about a lot of the food that we eat. How much do you sympathize with those experiences?
Like, when people are taught, you know, about food and where it comes from and how it affects their body, and that's why I believe so much in food education for our children in elementary school, right? And empowering pregnant women when they're pregnant, and all these little touch points that are important. When you do this, people make better choices. But it's not just about empowering people, about how to shop smart. You know, all the mistakes happen in the supermarket. They don't happen at home. They happen in the supermarket or in the high street. So it's very environmental. The thing is, like, when I went and lived in the most unhealthy town in America, it was really hard to make a good choice, even if you were empowered to make one. Like, every choice was a bad choice.
Yeah.
So statistically, you're all going to get unhealthy, and that's a reality, and that was the reality. So I think it's kind of like, and this project that I've just done in the last year, which was about superfood and like treating food like medicine, and you know, thinking about the gears of nutrition. So I'm not saying you can't have a burger or a bit of cake. Like, have it, and for the love of God, like, life ain't worth living without a bit of cake. But that's gear 3. And you need to know what gear 2 is and gear 1 is. And as long as you're, like, rifting those gears, you're all good. You can have your cake and eat it.
Is that what you're trying to get across with this focus on superfoods in the new book? Is that how you want your readers to understand eating?
Because I think, like, there's nothing more humbling than meeting people like your grandmother, right? And just to touch them and say, God, 100 years, like, and the respect. And then also you talk about their childhood, and you start to notice very, very quickly that one thing they all have in common is a garden and growing, or access to that very nearby. And it's not just about eating nutrient-dense food. It's the art of having to lock in with nature, bending down, squatting. You know, for most people post 50, flexibility and bone density is major. That's the key for longevity. But it's not just that, because it's about brain function and being sane and having a good conversation and having memories. So from skin to nails to hair to memory to flexibility, like, food can play a part. But it doesn't. I think people think that the right choice is boring. And I think what I've tried to prove in the series and the book was like, no. This is about just being aware and rifting off the good and the naughty.
I have to ask you about this recent news affecting meat lovers, that some kinds of meat are linked to cancer. What was your reaction to that news?
We've been saying this for 20 years. You know, it's been tracked for 20 years. We've known about it for ages. What you learn about science is that, you know, they just kind of get more and more confident as more studies come out. And, you know, I think what we know that highly processed food is high in salt, fat, and sugar often. And obviously in certain things, the sulfates and nitrates and stuff sort of used to make it safe, they're needed to make it safe. They're not very good for us. So does that mean you can never have it again? No. I mean, like, you can not have it if you don't want to. But really it's about, guys, wind it back. And actually if you do studies on just general people, like, it's quite common and often that they'll rattle out a bit of bacon for breakfast, rattle out a ham sandwich or sub for lunch, and then they're like knocking back some kind of like scrote burger or kind of like nuggets somewhere for dinner. And then that happening again and again in the week, common. So that's, you know, processed foods goes through, you know, anything processed. So it's just kind of wind it back, guys. But yeah, the association with cancers, it's there.
You're sort of playing with the definition of superfood, I think, with your new book and your TV show. How do you define superfood?
Well, I think it's a really good one that you bring that up, because obviously there is no superfood. There is no golden bullet. But I do think that the word superfood, I mean, I'm a dyslexic kid, right? So like, I get really annoyed with clever people that say grams and ounces and GDAs and percentages and kind of, you know, reference intakes for it. Don't confuse me with righteousness. Give me the teaspoons. Give me clarity, right? You know, and I think that, you know, superfoods, people get what it means. Our job is to deliver, like, you know, so for me, like, I had to invent, what does superfood mean? It's not one food, it's a cluster of foods that are nutrient dense, that are balanced, that don't tip any spikes of salt, fat, sugar, calories. And that if you eat from every recipe, it's only ever going to represent green and a good choice. And I think for me, that's the kind of point of the program, the book. It's like, I'm not saying you only have to eat this, but like, in this place at this time, I'm only going to talk about this.
And you hope to give people clarity around
definitely,
that
because
sort of
I
thing.
think that mums and dads and teenagers are really feel vulnerable. I do. I think they're confused, and it's beautiful. I mean, I've spent the last 17 years working with communities and people, often very poor communities, and it's amazing seeing bits of good information changing people's trajectory of health and life, but also just in Britain, and I know it's the same here, right? Many families don't even have a table. Many homes don't have space for a table. So just the kind of that old-fashioned, slightly romantic table is the altar of the home. It's true, it is. So I think, like, it's all quite wholesome stuff in my mind. But people might think I'm mad, so apologies for that if you do.
Well, let's throw out some examples of the foods you're talking about, nutrient-dense foods that you think should be a central part of people's lives.
Oh, you want me to give you a list up?
So, yeah, some examples.
Look, basically, very simple, like just loads of veg. You know, fiber's the next big thing in the next 10 years, you know, and how that allows the body just to sort of work correctly mechanically, but all the little micro actions that happen, you know, absorption of nutrients and filling your body with the good stuff. So veg galore. Don't just eat a couple of bits of fruit, eat a range of fruit through the seasons. Try and work with the seasons. You know, sort of lower your red meat and processed meats to a couple of times a week. You know, big up oily fish. You know, and definitely there's no one golden bullet. So variation. The body's amazing at sort of absorbing what it needs, but you got to give it. So the reason that, you know, a lot of people struggle is if they're eating the same food that doesn't have much nutrition, they're still hungry even though they're full, right? Your body, I want it. So
I'm thinking of an analogy being like exercise. They say to vary your exercise.
100%.
Yeah. You brought up your kids. You brought up your passion for kids. What do you hope food culture will look like for them in the future?
Do you know what? I believe passionately that people in different countries around the world make good choices when they have clarity. And business and money and marketing and associations with sport, you know, it's murkied that area. You know, our Olympics and World Cups have been hijacked with people that sell stuff, not just as a treat, but it's prolifically kind of in your life, in your face, you know, and it's so cheap and sort of buy one, get one free. And I just hope for our kids that we can fix the challenges of, you know, health globally by honesty and clarity And I don't care if you're famous for selling McDonald's. God bless you. And you know, but just be honest. You know, if you think about Super Size Me, the only reason that film was valid was because they said you can have it whenever you want it. Just be proud of being good at inventing something that's, you know, can be a treat or a small part of your diet. So I think honesty, clarity, and you know what's kind of uplifting is that the new CEOs and MDs of the world do expect more. You know, and as CEOs and MDs move on, you know, progress does come. But whether it's ethics or environment or, you know, sustainable foods or looking at waste, you know, these are, once you've decided as a consumer that may be listening to this, once you've decided you care, you know, you'll always be littered with topping up the care meter because not caring is an easy place to be. But I do think, you know, the reality is, you know, the biggest global worries of the planet right now are obesity, antibiotic resistance, and lack of water in a rising climate of population. And in our lifetime, if we can't readdress the balance, it only ends in war and famine. And I'm not making this up. This is just a fact and a reality. So we do have a duty to sort of, I don't know. I think in this day and age of technology, we can all play a part. Everything you buy is a vote. Everything you buy is a vote.
Well, I like your point about honesty being the fundamental change that you'd like to see.
What's the one thing I can do? Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Tell the truth. Don't confuse me. If you look at that thing on Facebook the other day, 10 million people have looked at it. That's like since Wednesday. That's kind of bonkers, and they all agree. Now that's powerful. The public want change. They want clarity. And actually, generally speaking, interestingly, people want it to be easier to get the right stuff, whether that's subsidies or even being available. And they want the bad stuff to be a little bit harder. They don't want me to take away their stuff, but generally speaking, people that are sensible want it easier to get the good stuff and harder to get the not so good stuff. And that's where we're at.
Well, it's a pleasure to hear your passion on this topic. Thank you very much.
Cheers, man.